Hello fellow magicians and welcome back to the channel. If you hear a few thunders is because it's raining outside. But in any case, today I want to discuss what I consider the most important mistake in our current system. So stay tuned and I'll tell you the story. Life is a battle and spirituality is the toolkit you need to survive it. Through my own personal experience, I will show you how to live spirituality on a daily basis. This is also the journal of the Averamento Sustainable Community, an experiment on human evolution, seeking to create a different type of human society based on sacred principles. Hello fellow magicians and welcome back to the channel. So in this episode, I want to discuss what I consider the most dangerous superstition that we have in society right now. And I also want to try a different format for the videos. Today I'm going to take you on a visual road trip to the farm so that you see a little bit of what it looks like to be in this place and how beautiful it is. And so with that, I want to start this story by saying that when I realized that I wanted to create a community and that I thought or I think that that's the solution for the mess that we're in right now, one of the things that I also wanted to do is I wanted to identify the problems that we have in the current system so as to not replicate them in the new social structure for the community. And through this, I ran into two very interesting research projects. The first one is called the Milgram experiment. And in this experiment, the setup of the experiment was that there were three subjects in the setup. There was a figure performing as a scientist, so the authority figure, another person that was the one that receiving the electric shocks and answering questions, and then a third subject that didn't know what the actual experiment was about, and it was the one that was giving electric shocks to the person providing answers. So the setup of the research was that, or the research experiment, was that there was a person that was going to ask questions to another subject, and then if this person couldn't answer correctly the questions, then he got an electric shock. And the shocks were increasing like in intensity over time, so each mistake meant a higher voltage or a higher electric shock. Throughout the experiment, the person giving the electric shocks could start listening to the other subject complaining of, this hurts, I don't want to be here, I want the experiment to end and whatnot. And so the person giving the electric shocks at some point started doubting and questioning and actually asking questions to the researcher and saying, I don't want to continue, or could you please go and check the other person, or something is happening, and so on. And so in this experiment, what one of the conclusions of the experiment was that depending on the level of pressure given by the scientist, so the quote-unquote authority figure, the person giving the electric shocks was willing to forget about everything, any moral upbringing or anything like that, and then go ahead and apply electric shocks that were even lethal. So the key here was how much pressure the authority figure could have over the person giving the electric shocks. And that meant that, the people carrying out the experiment were willing to even kill someone just because an authority figure was telling them that it was okay to continue and that they were the authority, the ones that knew about the experiment, and that they should proceed and forget about the consequences, because the researchers were going to bear with the consequences of whatever happened to the person receiving the electric shocks. The second experiment is called the Stanford Prison Experiment, and it was performed by Philip Zimbardo. And in this case, in the experiment, what happened is that in this case, all of the subjects knew about the experiment and knew what they were actually portraying. So the experiment was that they were going to enact what happens inside a prison. And then students were recruited and divided into two groups, the prisoners and the guards. And they were taken to like a secluded area of the university that was designed as a prison. And then, just act. Whatever came to their minds, they should carry on. I think that the only rule that they had to enforce was that the guards couldn't let any prisoner escape. And that was the only, quote unquote, law of the experiment. Well, it turns out that after 6 days into the experiment, another psychologist came in to check and to verify how the experiment was going. And she was actually shocked by the level of violence and aggression that the guards were performing on the prisoners. And the experiment was stopped on the 6th day. There are two more references that I would like to use before I reach conclusions. And the first one is a book that is called The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. And then the second one is a book called Political Panerology by Andrew M. something. And actually I'm going to write these books underneath so that you know what I'm talking about in case I'm mispronouncing something. In the first book, the author talks about how dangerous this concept of authority is, because with this excuse of having this authority figure, people are willing to give up people are willing to perform things that without this authority figure they wouldn't. And so they're willing to kill and commit robbery and lie and whatnot. Just because you think that you can take the responsibility of your actions outside of yourself and put this responsibility into someone else that is called this authority figure. And then in the second book, the Political Panerology actually is the study of evil. And the book is supposed to be a study on the science of evil, psychopathy, and the origins of totalitarianism. The second book was written by a Polish psychologist, and he lived through communist Poland in that era, and he was actually also exploring this notion of the rise of tyrannies and how tyrannies come to power. So how can regular people just, lose their morality and everything and just perform heinous crimes in the name of an authority figure or a leader, etc. The conclusion from all this research, and actually I've read more about psychopaths and whatnot, but my overall conclusions after all this research is that hierarchy, authority, and power are one single monster that actually it actually is kind of like a stimulant that makes people or transforms people into secondary psychopaths. My definition of a psychopath after a lot of reading is a person that has no empathy whatsoever. And empathy is just the quality or the ability of a person to actually understand the other person's feelings and emotions and connect with the other person emotionally into understanding what pain or situation they're going through. And so a psychopath is going to see people pretty much as objects, and so people are just there to be used, and they only exist to serve whatever goals the psychopath has. So the saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is actually true, because whenever you have a hierarchy in society, the people at the top of this pyramid are going to become secondary psychopaths. And it's going to be even worse when there is no limit and no accountability to the power. And so that's one of the things that is really worrisome about our current situation. Right now, we have a lot of people that have never been voted or elected or anything that are exercising a lot of power within world systems. And they are not accountable to anyone. We cannot even scrutinize their expenditures or anything that they're doing. And so that's why I think that it's important for government to exist, although I wouldn't call it government because that implies hierarchy. I would call it social service or collective service or something like that. It's important to have that, but it's also important to have a counterbalance to that system, and it's also important to have accountability to the people that are performing these social services. If you don't have that and you have this hierarchy system or pyramid system, you eventually run into tyranny. It doesn't matter if you're from the left, from the right, from anything. It's the same. Both the left and the right will eventually meet at this point of tyranny. And I guess also that, well, actually I know that actually the founding fathers of the U.S., so the United States of America, actually that's why they incorporated the Second Amendment in their Constitution, because they knew that government needed to have a counterbalance, and whenever government was actually going into tyranny, the people should have the right to do something about it. And I apologize for the thunders because there's raining outside. So sorry if you hear a few thunders, but it's because of that, I'm in the rainforest and thus it rains a lot. And so this is one of the things that is non-negotiable in the community that I want to create. I don't want the community to have any hierarchies, any authority, or any power structure within the community. Yes, we will have agreements within the community, like agreements of how we want to behave or what we want to do, or how to allocate our personal and community time, etc. But those are going to be agreements and decided within the entire group that is forming the community. But it's not, the community is not going to have any way to accumulate power or to create authority figures or to have a hierarchy. because of what I explained before. I think that, secondary psychopathy going rampant ends up in what we have right now in the world. And so with that, as usual, I want to thank you for being here with me in this episode. I'm going to leave in the description of the video a link to the community if you're interested. And please feel free to reach out to me because I'm actually looking for members. And as usual, if you want me to go deeper into any of the topics that I touch here, please write a comment in the description or in the comments of the video, and I'll be more than happy to expand any of the topics that I've touched today. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next episode.